Hi, everybody, once more. So yeah, it's been a long day. I think we are now with the last session here in this room. It's a session from Ayush from the University of Colorado. He did a feature for importing and exporting KVM instances, and he did it as part of the GSoC program this year. And yeah, I'm happy that he managed to join us online. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Ayush and kick you off. So let's get started.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to my talk. It's a beautiful and cold morning here in Colorado. The temperature is around what -8 degrees Celsius, and it's what 8:33 a.m. right now. I hope you enjoyed all the sessions so far, and you are looking forward to this one. So I will be talking about the feature that I did as part of my Google Summer of Code this year, which is import export VM for KVM Hypervisor. So if an operator has an existing infra and wants to adopt the cloud stack, this feature will provide seamless transition and will make their life easier. Oh, I forgot to share my screen. Just a second. I hope you all are able to see my screen now. All right. So, so yeah, little bit about me. I'm a master's student pursuing data science at University of Colorado, Boulder. Prior to this, I was working as a full stack developer for around 4 years for different MNCs. And this summer, I worked as a Google Summer of Code contributor for Apache Software Foundation. Then, if I talk about my hobbies, I love playing table tennis and chess in my leisure time. Also, also I'm an avid football and basketball fan. And I also like to try different sports and activities. Like last winter, I tried skiing for the first time, and it was way harder than I initially anticipated. So the agenda of today's talk would be I'm going to give a little bit introduction about the implementation of the feature that I worked upon, few concepts involving those features like what is unmanaged instance, what is managed instance. Then we will quickly skim through the flow diagram. We will see how we will import the instance for KVM and all the all the involved APIs that I extended, which is list unmanaged instance and import unmanaged instance APIs. Then we will look at the exporting instances and the API which I implemented to implement this feature. Then we will quickly have a walkthrough of the demo that I have recorded, and we will talk about the future scope. So moving on to next slide. Since everyone here present at the cloud stack, I think it is safe to assume that people would already be aware of basic concepts like what is cloud stack, how infrastructure as a service works, and like what is hypervisor, how virtualization and all works. So I'm not going to go into those basics. So unmanaged instance, these are the VMs, virtual machines, which are present at the hypervisor end, but it doesn't exist in the CloudStack database. So since it does not exist in the CloudStack database, it can't be managed, and hence the name unmanaged instance. Also, one thing to note here is we use virtual machine and instance word interchangeably. So somewhere you can find instance, somewhere you will find VM. Both have the same meaning. So once an unmanaged instance is imported into the cloud stack, its details are persisted in the cloud stack database, and it works just like any other virtual machine which is ingested in the cloud stack. And it is managed by the cloud stack, and hence the name managed instance. So this VM ingestion feature was already implemented for for VMware hypervisors in version 4.16, but now we would be extending it to the KVM hypervisor in the upcoming release, which is 4.19. Now let's talk about why do we need KVM when VMware was already present and VMware is quite popular. So one of the main reason is KVM is very lightweight. It is open source, so it is definitely way cheaper than VMware, and it is also very popular among the users. Then we will also talk about different APIs that I extended to implement this feature, which is list unmanaged instance, import unmanaged instance, and unmanaged virtual machine. Yeah. Okay. So this is end-to-end flow diagram of how the API works. Like when user sends an API request, it interacts with the cloud stack, and then it interacts with the hypervisor, and it returns the response. So like user start an API. For example, we can take list unmanaged instance API. So these user APIs calls the management server, which will create some core command such as get unmanaged instance command.java, which are then executed on hypervisor by the agent running on the host. So agent is a service which runs on the host to communicate with the management server. Then so these core commands are then this once they are created on the management server and they are sent to the host. So host will generate an answer or response for these core commands, and these response or answers are created on the host or agent, and then these command the response is sent back to management server, and then for management server will further delegate this response to the user. So, but in case of KVM, we have certain wrapper classes which are registered for the core commands and which is supported for KVM. So these wrapper classes directly engage with the hypervisor as part of this implementation. And for this hypervisor, and then so we have written certain wrapper classes to implement this, such as libvirt get unmanaged instance command wrapper. So both these core command and answer object can contain serializable attributes such as string, integer, transfer object. Like for this implementation, the unmanaged instance TO class is set in, the object of unmanaged instance TO class is set in libvirt get unmanaged instance command wrapper. So this was the overall view. Moving to next slide. So there are certain prerequisites which we needed to fulfill before we are able to call the APIs. Like for list unmanaged instance API, the KVM host should exist in the cloud stack. For importing unmanaged instance API, there are following attributes which needs to be created or added at the cloud stack end, like disk offering, service offering, network offering, and template. So if we talk about this import unmanaged instance API, in this API, the template parameter is optional, but in case of KVM, we need to provide the template ID because there are some metadata which are required to import the VM, such as guest OS ID, guest OS name, which is not guaranteed to be, to be available, unlike in the case of VMware, where we get all this information from vSphere. Then this list unmanaged instance API, this API is used to list all the unmanaged instances for a given cluster. So this API was added in CloudStack in version 4.14, and we already talked about the prerequisite that the KVM host should already be added as a CloudStack cluster. So the required parameter for this API is cluster ID. So we just need to provide the cluster ID, and this API will return just an object which will have the count of the of the unmanaged instance that are available, and also it will describe describe different attribute of the unmanaged instance, like host ID, CPU speed, CPU core speed, next and disk. So for this NIC and disk, an array will be an array of hash map would return, which will have different information. Like for NIC, it will be MAC address, VLAN ID, NIC ID. For disk, it will be the capacity, the storage type, and many more. So here's the screenshot of calling this list unmanaged instance API using the command line. So if you see here, I have used Monkeybox. Monkeybox is just a command line interface tool for Apache CloudStack, which is written in Python. It can also be used as an interactive shell to it can be used as interactive shell to simplify CloudStack management configuration, CloudStack management and configuration. So if you see this screenshot, we can see the count and we can see the details about unmanaged instance, like the cluster ID, CPU number, CPU speed. These comes as a part of service offering. Then we can see for disk and next an array of hash map is written where we can see different attributes like capacity, controller ID, label, and for next VLAN ID, MAC address, and yeah, adapter type. If you see the VLAN ID which is returned is -1. That is because in case of KVM, the VLAN is optional. But if it is VMware, then we are going to find a VLAN ID because for VMware it is mandatory. So moving on to the next slide. So this is just a screenshot of the UI screen of how the UI looks like. So on the left, we can see all the unmanaged instance, and on the right, we have the managed instance. So in this case, there was no managed instance. I have already unmanaged all the instance, so we don't see any managed instance on the right side. So the second API which I extended is import unmanaged instance. So this API imports an unmanaged instance into the CloudStack. This feature, this API was added in CloudStack in version 4.14. And there's again some prerequisite for this API, which we already spoke about. Like we need to provide storage, network, template ID. So there are some other parameters which are optional, which we can provide, like NIC IP address, migrate allowed, force, NIC network list, and many more. So this API is also going to return the similar output as list unmanaged instance API. The difference would be in case of list unmanaged instance API, we also return the count of the unmanaged instance, which will not be the case because we are just ingesting the virtual machine into the CloudStack. So it's just going to return the description or description attribute of the virtual machine we just ingested. So this is the CLI screenshot. If you see, we have passed, we are giving the cluster ID, the template ID, the name, the service offering ID, and the NIC and the network. So these are the mandatory parameters. So this example is for a virtual machine, which was when it was created, the network was L2 network. But if the network type is isolated, then in that case, we also need to provide the IP address. So we also have an option like if the user provide a specific IP address which it wants, so we can provide that. Or if the user does not want to give an IP address, it can choose. It can give list IP address equals to auto. In that case, CloudStack will provide an IP address to the virtual machine once it is ingested. Then this is how the import VM dialog box look like. As we have already seen, we have to provide the name, the template ID, the service offering ID. We can select different compute offering, small, medium. So there was another compute offering dual core, which I created as an admin. And we can also choose custom offering if the user want that. They can provide those custom offering as well. We have this option too. And then we have to choose the network. We can see the MAC address, the VLAN ID, and the network as L2. Then we have two more toggle buttons. One is the migrate allowed, the other is force. So migrate allowed is basically used in case of resource allocation. Let's say we are trying to ingest a virtual machine, a host which does not have the the specific configuration which is required. Let's say the user wants to have a machine for 100 cores, but uh, but the host does not support this, and the user already have another host which is deployed the in the CloudStack environment. So in that case, if the user choose this migrate allow tab option true, then in that case that VM will be migrated to the other host which is already available. So this is like one example where we can use migrate. There are many more cases like that. Then the other option is the force option. If we give force as true, or if we on this toggle, then in that case, if the specification which is provided by the host does not match with the cloud stack, then in that case, cloud CloudStack is going to override all those specification and it will ingest the virtual machine. Otherwise, if we have we did not if we do not on this toggle, then in that case it's going to throw error that VM ingestion failed. Then the third API which I extended is export VM API. So this unmanaged instance, so this is the export VM API, which is unmanaged virtual machine. It is used to unmanage the managed instance. So once we unmanage the instance, so the VM will still persist on the KVM hypervisor, just that all the records of this virtual machine in the CloudStack database will vanish, it will be removed. And this API was added in CloudStack in version 4.15. So this API needs to have one required parameter, which is the ID of the virtual machine, which is to be unmanaged, and it is going to return the details and success. So detail will be just a string. We are going to show message if it is successfully unmanaged, then it will display that it is successfully managed, and success will return the Boolean value. It will be true if the API is successful, and false if there is some error, and we can display that message in details. So this is the UI screen for exporting managed VM. As we can see on the right side, there is a list of managed VM which we are trying to manage. We just have to select and we have to click on unmanaged button on the right side, and then we will be able to manage these instances. So I'll quickly show this demo. So as you can see, when we are trying to do import and export from UI, we need to first select the source, that is which KVM, which hypervisor we want to use. Is it for VMware or KVM? So here we have chosen KVM, then we choose the action from the action drop-down list. So we are choosing the action as managed and unmanaged existing instances. Then we choose the unmanaged instance which we want to ingest, and then we click on the import instance. So then when we click on the import instance, that's when we get the import dialog box, and we have to pass the mandatory parameters like the display name, the template, and the service offering, the network, and then yeah, we can just click on the import instance button and it will be deployed in CloudStack environment. Yeah. So now if we just toggle back on the KVM, we can see that 20 VM is managed instance now, I20 20 VM. So this was the one which we unmanaged. So the other thing I'm trying to show here is, in case of unmanaged instance, we can only unmanage an instance, one instance at a time. But for managed instance, we can select more than one virtual machine at a time. So the batch export is available, but this feature is not available in case of unmanaged instance. Okay, so this was, now moving on to the next slide. So now we talk about the future scope. So, so this feature import-export instances, this functionality can also be extended to other hypervisors such as Zen Server and Hyper-V, which are also very popular, as this feature makes the life easier of an operator who is trying to, who is trying to adopt the cloud stack, and the transition is also very seamless. So yeah, the other feature that we can work upon in the future would be providing the batch import of unmanaged VMs, for a single account and a project. Like I showed you, we cannot do the we cannot do the batch import of unmanaged instance, but we can do that in case of export instances. So yeah, this is about it. And I would like to express my gratitude to my mentor, Nicholas, for the unwavering support and guidance provided during my tenure in the Google Summer of Code. Additionally, I would extend my thanks to Rohit, Dan, Abhishek, Kishan, and Goto for their thorough reviews and meticulous feedback, which which significantly contributed to refinement of my work. I'm also thankful to this CloudStack community for their warm welcome and continuous support. The entire experience has been a tremendous learning curve for me, and I'm genuinely appreciative and grateful for this opportunity given to me to showcase my work on the stage. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Ayush. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it, and thank you for your
yeah,
work and your dedication. It's been a great honor to have you with this feature,
yeah,
and I hope to see more of you in the
yeah,
coming years.
yeah,
Some
of course.
may I
Thank you
ask
for being
for
so
some
patient with me.
applauses for Ayush? Uh, do we have any questions from the audience to Ayush?
So I was curious, what happens when you need to, so you need to select the OS template in CloudStack,
Yes, yes, yes,
but
the
this is
template.
an existing instance on a KVM host. So what would then happen if do you then redeploy it with that template, or what happens with the instance
So,
data in that existing instance?
so that's what I'm saying. When you're trying to ingest the virtual machine, you need to provide a template. So in case of VMware, there's an option of demo template which you can provide. But for KVM, you would need to choose a specific, you would need to choose a specific template because these metadata from where we get the guest OS ID and guest OS name, this might not be present for any virtual machine which we are trying to ingest. So in that case, this import process will fail. If the VM already has this guest OS ID and template, then it would not be an issue. But if these metadata are not available, then we would have to, select the template. So that's why we have made this field as mandatory for KVM.
Thank you. A couple of questions from the online audience. Is there any plan of adding mass import and export in future releases?
Yeah, so like I was talking about the future, the mass import can be added in the upcoming release. We are planning on that, but I mean I cannot be very certain of that because I have worked with this for a very short amount of time, and I was working on the task which I was assigned for. But I think yeah, there's definitely a plan to have a batch import like we can like it is available for export. We can do batch export, but unfortunately right now we can only manage one instance at a time. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from the public? All right. Cool. Thank you very much, Ayush.
Yeah, thank you for the thank you so much. Have a good one, guys.